Hello and welcome to the 6th episode of the Happy Days podcast with me, Callum Church. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the importance of time. Now, today's episode is going to be a little bit different. There's not so much structure, and it's going to be a little bit more of an insight into the way that I'm thinking, because I'm kind of frustrated at the moment. And I'll tell you why I'm frustrated is because I've just taken the morning off of working on this podcast and off of working on outside commitments as well, to spend some time with my girlfriend. This morning we've been to the gym, and then after that we had a little chat over a cup of coffee. And the reason why I'm frustrated is because even though I've had such an amazing morning, which has been productive, and a good amount of time, a good way to spend my free time, quality time in my free time. Even though I've had such a good morning, there's still a sense of guilt inside of me where I feel as if I should be working. And it's so frustrating because this is something I'm trying to get out of my life. It's part of my own development, which, you know, I'm always trying to develop. That's the whole point of this podcast, the whole point of, you know, my hobby of personal development. I'm always trying to develop. So I'm not quite there yet, obviously. But I'm just so frustrated because why do I feel guilty for spending quality time this morning off of work in my leisure time, my free time? I should be, you know, giving myself that leisure. So, you know, for me, time is far more important than money, and everyone should consider time far more important than money. But our lives don't always reflect that, because, you know, the reason why time is so much more valuable than money is because it's fixed, it's limited, it's uncertain how long we're all going to live. But the fact is, in each and every one of our lives, they're going to come to an end one day. Whereas money, you can always earn that back. You can always earn that back. And, you know, money isn't limited. You can always earn more money. You know, it's almost like a load of people are sort of preparing for their lives instead of living their lives. They're merely just existing instead of living. And this is what one of my favourite philosophers, Seneca the Younger, he's a Roman philosopher, and he spoke all about this, and it's a lot of his philosophy which I've used as inspiration for this episode, where I'm going to be talking about, you know, my frustrations and just kind of ranting in a way. So what I'm trying to focus on living now and not in the future. And I feel like a lot of people struggle to live now and not in the future. In the second episode of this podcast, I spoke about how to live in the moment and maximise your life. And it was about focusing on the moment to really get the most out of life. Because the fact is, a lot of people almost looking into the future as if there's almost like this perfect life set up for them in the future. But no one can guarantee that. No one can guarantee that they're going to have a perfect life in the future. For example, some people might be waiting for their retirement to be able to live in leisure and, you know, really live. We're all sort of working towards this built-up future which doesn't really exist because it's not certain. The only thing that is certain in life is our moment right now, and that's what we really need to grasp. Because by the time that you reach that future, if at all, even if you do, I mean, who knows, you might die tomorrow. It's, you know, it's not certain, but by the time that you reach that future, you're going to be older. And you're going to have less time. You're going to have less of the moment to actually live your life. And you know, by the time you might get to that future, you might be far too old to live the kind of life which you want to live. You know, every moment that you spend living for the future and waiting for the future, each of those moments are just dripping through your fingertips. You know, it's just dripping away. You know, I feel like a lot of young people my age, I'm 20 years old, a lot of young people, we're always looking towards the future and looking for this sort of made up future. And then a lot of older people are sort of looking back on their memories and living for their memories, where their lives slowly begin to, be a bit more limited. Maybe you might have certain disabilities or illnesses or something like that, and they're sort of looking back, whereas the young people are looking forward. But we're missing the most important piece, which is the moment. And this is why I'm so frustrated about this morning, and why I feel guilty about having such a fantastic morning with my girlfriend. It's because I'm supposed to be living in the moment, but I'm not really, grasping that moment. And I'm not enjoying the moment where, I'm spending quality time with my girlfriend, and I'm also working on myself and my body to improve myself in the gym. Seneca, my favourite philosopher I just mentioned, he thinks of time as like a stream of water, which is limited, a limited stream of water. Imagine you're in the desert, right, and you're travelling across the desert, and you're going to be thirsty, and then you come across a stream of water. What are you going to do? You're going to, bend down in that river and just gulp up as much water as you can because you're thirsty. Whereas the way that we live our lives, if we're looking into the future, it's almost as if you're sort of stood next to the river just waiting for a bit of that water to pass before you start drinking it. That's just ridiculous, isn't it? But this is the way that a lot of people are living our lives. Maybe you're in a job you dislike just to pay the bills. Or maybe you're with a partner you don't love just so that you're not alone. I've certainly seen people that, do this in their lives, and they are with partners that they don't want to be with just so they're not alone. And they are in a job that they dislike just to pay the bills. I've seen these people in my life, and I'm trying to learn from this, but these people, they're just delaying their happiness. And that's something which has been key to me recently, is that I'm focusing on my happiness and on the moment, and I'm trying to stay as far away from that idea and as far away as from those people as I can. Because so many people fall victim to this. They're not actually living their lives. They're just existing, Another thing which Seneca says is that you can't judge whether someone has lived a life well spent on how grey their hairs have become. You can't, because they might not have necessarily lived a fulfilled life and a good life. They might have just existed for a long time. So what we've got to do, we've got to invest our time into happiness. So how do we do this? We do this by doing things you love, like having an amazing morning with my girlfriend today, where we went to the gym and had a really good chat over a coffee. That was fun. So I need to enjoy that, and I need to, keep doing things like this which make me happy. And it's just frustrating how I have this guilt about this morning. And another way that which we do this is we invest our time into building a life you'll love. You give yourself, and by this what I mean is you give yourself a fishing rod and not just a bunch of fish. So you don't, build up loads of money or something like this, because you're just building up fish. But what you do, you build a life which is going to give you that continued, production of fish. For example, you might sort of make a different choice in what job you want to do for the rest of your life. For example, I'm doing this podcast. I was at a stage in my life where I knew I was on a pathway which ultimately led to me not living the life which I wanted. So I decided to make a change, and I started this podcast because what I wanted to do, I wanted to, build something which I want, a life which I want. I wanted to offer inspiration and help others and give myself a purpose. But most of all, I wanted to have fun. I didn't have this in the life I had before, which is why I'm really trying to get this podcast out there and really trying to send a message about how we should all be living our lives and how I aspire to live my life and the changes I'm making. And I suppose that's reflected in this podcast, where I'm sort of ranting and I'm sort of going in all these different directions, but it's ultimately got the same message. And it's about how we spend our time. Because you shape your life over a series of choices. We're too busy that we don't even realise that we're all the main characters in our lives. We've all got choices, but it's almost as if we're living our lives for someone else. We're working a job for the benefit of others instead of for the benefit of ourselves. And the reason we do this is just to pay the bills. But if you're living that kind of life where you're just paying the bills and you're working for someone else's benefit, are you really living? Or perhaps think about the way that you spend your free time. What do you do with your free time? Do you spend it watching TV or playing video games, or maybe drinking or something like that after work? Are you doing this, or are you spending your free time to be productive? Because what is your purpose in life? Do you want to have in your grave, he or she was a compassionate, empathetic person who was driven for development and fulfillment of life? Do you want that? Or do you just want to have on your grave, he or she watched TV? Because this is ultimately what our free time gives us, what our purposes give us, how productive our lives are. This is what it gives us. It's our legacy. It's seizing the moment, taking the opportunity that is the future and converting it into the legacy of your past. That's what it's all about. Now, some people might oppose your choices, Some people have opposed the choices I've made recently about my life. But just consider whether they're a person who has grasped the choices they could make in their lives. Just consider whether they're a person who are living, or are they a person who are just existing? See, I'm spending too much of my time for the benefit of others, or just for the benefit of, monetary benefits, that money. But I'm losing track of what is really important, and that's definitely leisure. Definitely leisure, and I'll tell you why. It's because, leisure is, it builds memories. It builds memories, and memories are so important because it gives you, it fuels your long-lasting happiness. If you think about those older generations where they're looking back on their memories, and that's what gives them happiness. That's why they look back. See, I'm not spending it for myself. It's not for my own development, and it's not for my own leisure. And this guilt is just so frustrating because this is what I'm trying to live for. I'm trying to live for, my development and my leisure, which is so important. But I still just got this guilt around spending this free time. And it just shouldn't be like that, and that's why it's so frustrating, and why I just feel like I need a vent on this podcast. I don't even know if this is going to be a good episode, by the way, but I just feel like I've got to get this out there, because it's just something I've got to get off my chest. But also I think it could be like a good insight for other people to think about, the way that they're spending their time, and how important their time is in their lives. This is just something I'm constantly trying to get away from. Misuse of time, or just that guilt of giving yourself the leisure, and I don't always mean like the unproductive forms of leisure, like sitting in front of the TV. I don't mean that. Imagine if you spend your free time reading, or having productive discussions with others, or going to the gym. This is building your life for yourself. That's what it's doing, and it's the leisure builds the memories, like I've said, and it gives you that long-lasting happiness. You're going to feel so much more fulfilled by doing something productive, like reading a book or something, than you would sitting in front of the TV for a few hours in the evening. You're going to feel so much more fulfilled. So, that's really important, what I guess I'm trying to get across in this episode as well. So I'm trying to get away from these things, but it still creeps into my life. And I think this is because of the society that we've established. We're all grown to be workers and not individuals, not entrepreneurs, not individuals with their own lives and purposes and journeys. You see, we're all forced into this sort of pipeline as kids where we go through school and you stay in school between these hours every day, and you do as you're told, and you raise your hand when you go to the toilet. And you think in a certain way. And then after that, you go to high school, which is exactly the same. You go to college, which is exactly the same. And if you choose to, which a lot of people do, you go to your university, and it's more or less exactly the same. And what we do, in our lives, for certain years of our lives, there's one person that has control, and that's the teachers. And then once we're finished at university or college or wherever it is you step off of that educational pipeline, you then just fed into work. And there's one person who is in charge, and that's your boss. And it's just exactly the same way. We're all workers, and we're all bred for the benefit of others, not for ourselves. It's like this sort of weird, like, misconception where we think it's for our benefit, but it's not. We think earning money is for our benefit, but it's not, because we're earning money for other people. And then we're given just a slither of that. There's not enough entrepreneurs in the world, for sure. There's not enough individual thinkers in the world, for sure. And this is something that's really frustrating, because so many people just I don't think they're awake to it. They're not awake to it. And this is why I've made certain changes in my lifestyle recently, and certain changes in my life. It's because I'm trying to be an individual, and I'm trying to break away from this horrific pipeline I've been fed through my entire life. I'm 20 years old. I've just gotten out of this, really, and I'm trying to break away from it. And I guess these ideas is what I'm trying to feed off to other people through the platform of this podcast. And I guess that's why I'm so passionate about it. It's because we're not living, we're existing. And yeah, it's just a horrific spiral that I guess we go around in, and I guess that's why there's not so much structure to this podcast, is because it's just a sort of vicious circle of constant, constant just lacking. I think that's the word. It's just lacking in everything, lacking in individuality. And I know this episode has been a bit muddled, and I know it's probably been quite hard to follow, which is understanding. I think I'm going to have a bit of a job to edit this episode, because honestly, I've literally sat down with a few notes, just small notes, but I've sat down and just tried to vent and just get these ideas out of my head, because I think they would be useful, but it's almost like a therapy session for myself, if I'm honest, as well, because I'm just really, it's really troubled me this morning. So if you struggle to take, some of the messages which I've been trying to talk about in this episode, if you struggle to take these on board, just think about and really take in this last thing which I'm going to talk about. And it's the fact that everyone needs to think more. Philosophy is beautiful, and philosophy is what has given me the opportunity to actually live my life and actually be the main character in my own life. Because before I found philosophy, and before I found personal development and all these things, and understanding, why it is we live these ways, in the psychology of our brains and such, before I found all that, I was a worker, and I was bred well in that pipeline of workers instead of individuals. So hopefully this podcast has just helped you understand that we need to think more, but which I'll get onto. But hopefully this podcast will let you peer into the way which my mind, thinks, and how my mind works, and my thoughts behind this. Because we do all need to do more thinking. That's so important, and it's important because it's the key. It's the key ingredient to anyone's personal development. Is thinking. It's it's self-awareness. Because it's a self-awareness which helps you assess yourself. Your life needs to be measured, and your life needs to be assessed in order for it to be improved. So it's really important that you build this self-awareness and you start thinking about, who you are, essentially. Think about the choices you made in life and how they've made you who you are. I think that's the key. Thinking about why you are as you are is active self-awareness. So if you're doing that, I think you're well on your way in your journey of personal development, and well on your way to live a fulfilled life. It's just keeping this self-awareness around you. It's it's just important that you think about your life. So your past, your path, which is your future, because it's important to understand where you are in your life. Because it's got to be, your life has got to be assessed, and it's got to be measured in order for you to live a fulfilled, developed life. you've got to think about how you spend your time. But most importantly, you've got to think about what changes or what choices you can make to live a better life. Now, I know this podcast has been really muddled, but that's all I've got for today's episode. I do hope that you've taken something from this. I know it's been a bit muddled and a bit confused and a bit different from our typical episodes, but hopefully it's been productive for you as it has been for me in this sort of weird self-therapy lesson, self-therapy session. So yeah, I really hope you enjoyed. That's all from me. Take care.